Blah, 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 blah. I have to step over dogs to do this because they won't leave me alone today for some reason. But anyway, welcome back to 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. And honestly, that little video of me explaining that bread situation, didn't expect the response I got. Hey, I ain't a fucking hero. I'm not a hero, okay? I just did something I felt I had to do. And whether the situation has actually been resolved, I have no clue, because when I did call the church, I did leave my name and phone number, and they didn't get back to me. So as far as I'm concerned, nothing was resolved and probably won't be resolved, because some people just refuse to stand up and do the right thing. If I go back and I see the same shit, if I actually see him physically touch a woman again or push a woman out of the way again, I'm either going to do one of two things. I'm going to call 911, which will probably be a waste of time because cops don't want to get involved in petty shit. Or I'm just going to have to smack the guy, which isn't a smart idea, but I don't know what else to do. I just get tired of the whole bullying mentality in this country here and the underlying fear that every other person might pull a gun. Back in, okay, I'm old, I'm 70, all right, I'm from, New York, New Jersey, that area. People say, guys from that area don't have any backup, which we don't, but I'm not stupid either. Trying not to get myself in trouble, as some people have advised me not to, and people were worried about my safety and stuff like that, and I appreciate that. No, I'm not going to do something stupid, but also I'm not going to allow women to be bullied by some little scumbag. So that's where that lies. But again, I appreciate all the input on that. And like I said, I'm not a hero. I just tried to do the right thing, which I thought was the right thing. But now let's put over other people's stuff, because that's what we're supposed to do here. And Midnight Tales, I had a while before I could get through this thing, because it's over 100 pages. It's put out by Midnight Magazine. You can get that at Big Cartel. But this one's huge. It's over 100 pages. And got a bunch of writers in here, and it was edited by my buddy Eric Wright and his wife Angie Wright, and layout and digital works by J.D. Wright. So it's a family affair, but got some great writers in here. J.H. Preston, Scott Urban, Tom Balco, Michael Page, Josh Poole, Rocky Calavito, who also writes for Grindhouse Resurrection and has put out 2 standalone novels, which are pretty good. Tony Bacon, Kurt Newton, Derek Austin Johnson. Too many to name here. Jay Smith, Greg Patrick. I mean, if you're into fiction, horror fiction, crazy fiction, stuff like that, you need to pick this thing up. It's packed. There isn't a wasted space on this page. It's Midnight Tales number 8. Available from the Big Cartel, the Midnight Crypt, I believe. But go on Facebook, look at Midnight Magazine, you'll find it. It's well worth a read if you're into horror fiction. And what else came out? Skum Culture number 4 out of Germany. You can tell this is sort of, it's a definite, sort of like, almost like a homage to the fanzines of yesteryear in the 80s, like the Gore Gazette and things like that. And this one covers Don't Look in the Basement, News from the Zine Scene, and the lowest kind of scum, Jess Franco review. And there was something, I'm in here too because they did a little thing on the Avon films, and Aaron contacted me about a few words about Avon films and wants me to do something more lengthy down the road. So sure, I got no problem with that. Another book I picked up is Made in Mexico, Hollywood South of the Border. And this is the first book to document U.S. films made in Mexico. And it covers Mexican films and the directors that basically loved Mexico and wound up being there. And there's something, I know I've mentioned this name before, Emilio Fernandez. He, as a teenager, rode with Pancho Villa, was going to go to jail for a long time, and I don't know if you can see this shot of him here. I'll try to bring this in because it's a little sepia toned. But he wound up in the States for 25 years before he went back to Mexico. And here's a little trivia for you. Here's another shot of him. On the set of The Fugitive there. But this is, I found this really interesting. Emilio was the model for the Oscar. I mean, this guy in his youth was pretty much cut and ripped here, and he was the model for the Oscar, the statuette. And this book documents, Mexican filmmaking, and also goes into, Sam Peckinpah and John Huston, the films they shot down there. John Wayne films shot down there, and the end of the book is basically every movie that was shot in Mexico. And a lot of movies were shot in Mexico. The Torch, The Pearl, this is going back in the 40s. The Brave Bulls from the 50s. Second Chance, Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, 52. And then, let's see, Hondo was shot down there with John Wayne. Robber's Roost, The Tall Men. Treasure of Pancho Villa. Daniel Boone, Trailblazers. And of course, we got into, let's do the cover again so everybody knows what I'm doing here. You get into the fact that, basically Major Dundee was shot down there. The Wild Bunch was shot down there. Peckinpah used Emilio Fernandez in 3 films. He was Mapache in The Wild Bunch. He sort of did a cameo as a sheep rancher in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And he was the main guy in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. This guy was known all over the place, and I think I said this story before. We had 3 Mexican stock boys working at Liquidators, and I picked up the Wild Bunch, and I just mentioned the name Emilio Fernandez, and they went back and they went, El Indio. They were in awe of the guy. The guy was a legend down in Mexico. He was also a crazy guy, from what I understand. Somewhat in the mode of Sam Peckinpah, and basically, I think he killed somebody at one point. During some argument, he shot somebody, and I guess he went to jail for a while or something. But that book is amazing, and like I said, it basically details every American film shot south of the border. Now we got another one here. Last but not least, the Keirn Chronicles, Volume 1. Steve Keirn's fabulous life in professional wrestling, and my friend, Lorena, picked this up for me and mailed it to me, and I ate this book up in a day and a half. Steve Keirn was born in Florida. The backstory is amazing because his father, Richard Keirn, was shot down in World War II over Nazi Germany and spent the remainder of the war in a POW camp. He was still in the Air Force in the early days of Vietnam, where he was shot down and presumably killed. At least that's what they had told Steve. As a young man, Steve had to assume to be the man of the house. It wasn't until later that he found out that his father was still alive. He was one of the first 14 prisoners paraded through the streets of, I believe it was Hanoi or something, North Vietnam, whatever. But anyway, he didn't get out of prison until the end of the war. So Steve basically grew up without his father. And his boyhood friends in high school were Mike Graham and Dick Slater. And Mike Graham, if you don't know, his father was the legendary Eddie Graham, who was probably the best finish man in the business and the promoter of championship wrestling from Florida. So he sort of took Steve under his wing and became like a second son to him, and basically got him into the business. Steve didn't really, in the beginning, he didn't want to go in because he saw how other people were trained, and basically they went into the sportatorium, the doors were locked, and Eddie Graham or Hiro Matsuda or Bob Roop would beat the shit out of these guys and wouldn't let them leave. And Steve was trained thinking that was going to happen to him, but then when he learned the ropes and learned them well, he was taken on the side and taught how it really is. Well, he was in Florida, and it dawned on him that he was only going to go so far, as a young wrestler in Florida. So he was traded up to Georgia, went to work in Georgia. Everybody goes to these territories. See, this is how you learned back then. You went from territory to territory and learned. So when he came back to Florida, he was a more seasoned guy and wound up having all 3 belts put on him at one point. And also, before he had left the first time, the booking agent, Jody Hamilton, aka the Masked Assassin, came up with an idea that would basically have Bob Roop go on camera and insult Steve's father as a coward for being captured twice, which would leave Steve to attack him at the podium and beat him senseless. Well, they did the angle and it worked, and Bob Roop said later, and this was this year, 2023, on the Tales from the Territory episode, where he was doing a roundtable with Steve Keirn, Kevin Sullivan, Jerry Briscoe, and some other people, that basically that angle made him. And Bob Roop was no slouch. Steve basically at one point got paired with Mike Graham as a tag team because Mike was a smaller guy, and there wasn't any nepotism down there. I mean, his father really never hung a bunch of titles on Mike. Mike was a smaller guy, and worked. So that worked for a while. There was a sort of falling out between Steve and Eddie Graham because Eddie Graham was an alcoholic and started drinking again when Steve was getting into the business. And he saw how things would deteriorate. So he left and he went to Memphis, where they put him with Stan Lane and formed a team called the Fabulous Ones. Jerry Jarrett put that together. They took one of the Fargo brothers, Jackie Fargo, because the Fargos were really hot back in the 60s, and created this team, the Fabulous Ones. And they came out with MTV-like music entrances, wearing suspenders and tuxedo jackets and things like that, and really set the territory on fire. I forget the exact reason they left. It was something to do with basically they were the hot act, but the 2 hot stars in the territory were Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, and they would always switch booking duties, and they made sure they were on top even though the Fabulous Ones were drawing all the money. There was a big feud with the Fabulous Ones against the Moondogs, Randy Cully, and Larry Booker. And like I said, all of a sudden they had to leave because something went wrong, and they went up to Vern Gagne's AWA in Minneapolis, where they got into a program with the Road Warriors. And Steve said the money was great up there. It was just the winters sucked. For a southern boy having to basically stay inside most of the year because it was too friggin' cold, it was getting to be too much. Plus they had a situation with the Road Warriors where basically the first time they locked up with the Road Warriors, Hawk said, forget what they told you in the back, forget the finish that Vern wants, we're going to do something our way and do it our way and you won't get hurt. Well, Steve wasn't about to let his team get brutalized by the Road Warriors and be made look like job guys. So he changed the finish on his own, which started an argument with Vern Gagne, and he told him to go talk to Hawk and told him what Hawk said. It was basically a threat. So it didn't end there. It seems that they went down to Puerto Rico where they were going to be working for a week, and the Road Warriors came in for one night and basically refused to do the job. So again, Steve had to improvise on the spot so they wouldn't look like shit. He basically said, we're going to leave anyway, fuck it. So they were up in the AWA, and like I said, Steve said he was making good money, but he couldn't take the winters. He was tired. His kids couldn't go outside and stuff, so he said he was going back down, and eventually he and Stan split up. Stan, of course, went to Jim Cornette and became part of the Midnight Express with Bobby Eaton. And they became a huge successful tag team for many years. Steve went back to Florida where there was still a promotion going and tried to keep it going. But that's where the book sort of ended because he left it wide open for his move into the WWE, or whatever the hell it's going to be called at that point, as Skinner. And then also he was one of the doinks after Matt Bourne got fired. And now he's a trainer for Florida Championship Wrestling, which I got a funny feeling he has a part of. So it's really an interesting book. A lot of road stories, a lot of rib stories, a lot of stories about genuine tough guys like Blackjack Mulligan, Harley Race, Ming, and it tells the real story about the Ken Patera incident out in the Midwest where Ken was sort of refused service at a McDonald's, threw a rock through the window, and the rest is history. Steve has the real story on that about what really happened, and it was Patera's shitty attitude that made it happen, regardless of what he says. Like I said, great book. My friend Lorena picked it up for me, sent it down, and I like I said, I killed it in 2 days. It was great, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Now, there's been some other questions asked of me about the magazines. I still have Grindhouse Purgatory 1 because I got more of them in. I still have Grindhouse Resurrection, I'm sorry. I keep fucking slip back into that other thing. Hard to get out. Grindhouse Resurrection 1 and 2 I have. And I also have about 7 of the original Something Weird Blue books. Zammy Adams had asked me about these. Very simply, $10 a piece, $5 shipping. If you get 1, 2, or 3, it's $5 shipping. I can do that. Simply PayPal the money to Mr. 42nd Street Pete at yahoo.com. That's MR42ND, street spelled out, Pete spelled out, at yahoo.com. And please give me your address, because some people have done this and I had to track them down to get their addresses to ship it. So it's all good. Like I said, I only have 7 of the blue books left. The other ones I have stock on, at least 20 of each. So, you know, they're still available if anybody wants to get them. Again, 10 each, $5 shipping for up to 3 of them. So that's our show for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. Above all, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip side.